Imagine a man with no money, no political connections, no formal education, and no citizenship in the country he wishes to lead. He is a nobody, a drifter sleeping in homeless shelters, selling cheap watercolor paintings to buy bread. Yet within 20 years, this same man would hold the power of life and death over millions, plunging the world into its darkest hour. This is not just the story of Adolf Hitler. It is a blueprint of how a democracy commits suicide. How did he do it? And more importantly, who led him? To understand the rise, we must first understand the fall. The year is 1918. Germany has lost the Great War. But the defeat didn't happen on the battlefield in the eyes of the German people. It happened, they believed, at home. The German army was still standing on foreign soil when they surrendered. This created a fertile ground for a lie that would become the foundation of Nazi power. It was called the Dolchstoßlegende, or the stab-in-the-back myth. The idea was that the brave soldiers weren't defeated by the enemy, but betrayed by Jews, socialists, and politicians back in Berlin. Hitler, a soldier blinded by mustard gas in a hospital bed, heard this news and wept. He didn't just feel defeated, he felt a burning purpose ignite. He found his voice not in art, but in rage. The 1920s in Germany, known as the Weimar Republic, was a time of unprecedented chaos. Hyperinflation was so bad that a loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. People carried cash in wheelbarrows. The middle class was wiped out. Into this vacuum stepped Hitler. He joined a tiny, insignificant group called the German Workers' Party. It had barely any members. But Hitler discovered he had a superpower. He could speak. He didn't speak like a politician. He spoke like a revivalist preacher. He tapped into the raw, unpolished anger of the working class. He told them their suffering wasn't their fault, it was the fault of the others, the November criminals, the international financiers. He gave them a target for their pain. But here is where the story shifts, the untold turning point that many miss. In 1923, Hitler tried to seize power by force. He marched into a beer hall in Munich, fired a pistol into the ceiling, and declared a revolution. It was a disaster. The police opened fire. 16 Nazis died, and Hitler was arrested. By all logic, this should have been the end. A failed coup usually leads to execution or obscurity. But for Hitler, it was the start of his true rise. During his trial, the judge allowed him to speak for hours. He turned the courtroom into a stage. He became a national celebrity. And while sitting in a comfortable prison cell, he wrote Mein Kampf. He realized something crucial. You cannot destroy democracy with a gun. You must destroy it from the inside. He decided to pursue a strategy of legality. He would get elected to destroy the elections. Fast forward to 1929. The Great Depression hits. The American stock market crashes and the American banks pull their loans out of Germany. The German economy, which was just recovering, collapses again. Unemployment rockets to 30%. This was the oxygen Hitler needed. In 1928, the Nazis had 2.6% of the vote. By 1930, they had 18%. By 1932, they were the largest party in the Reichstag. But, and this is vital, Hitler was never voted in as a majority dictator. The majority of Germans never voted for him. In the last free election, the Nazis got 33% of the vote. That means 67% of Germans voted against him. So how did he become chancellor? He didn't take it, he was invited. The year is 1933. The German government is gridlocked. The old conservative elites, led by President Paul von Hindenburg, hated Hitler. They called him the Bohemian Corporal. They thought he was vulgar and low class. But they had a problem. They had no popular support. They looked at Hitler and saw his massive crowds. They thought they could use him. Franz von Papen, a conservative politician, famously said, "In 2 months, we'll have pushed Hitler so far into a corner that he'll squeak." They thought they could hire him as a puppet chancellor, surround him with conservative ministers, and use his popularity while they pulled the strings. It was the greatest miscalculation in political history. On January 30th, 1933, Hindenburg appointed Hitler as chancellor. Hitler didn't squeak, he bit. Immediately upon entering office, he began dismantling the state, but he needed a crisis to seal the deal. February 27, 1933, the Reichstag, the German parliament building, bursts into flames. A young Dutch communist was found inside. Whether he acted alone or was set up by the Nazis is still debated, but it didn't matter. Hitler didn't waste the crisis. He ran to a senile President Hindenburg and claimed the fire was the signal for a massive communist uprising. He demanded emergency powers. Hindenburg signed the Reichstag Fire decree. This decree suspended civil liberties, no more freedom of speech, no more freedom of the press. Police could arrest anyone without charge. The Nazis used this to arrest thousands of political opponents literally overnight. With the opposition in jail or in hiding, Hitler proposed the Enabling Act. This law would allow the chancellor to pass laws without the approval of parliament or the president. It was essentially a law to make the law irrelevant. To pass it, he needed a 2/3 majority. He surrounded the opera house where the vote was held with SS troops chanting "full powers or else." Inside, he promised the Catholic Center Party he would protect the church if they voted for him. They believed him. The act passed. Democracy was legally voted out of existence. What followed was Gleichschaltung, coordination. Every aspect of life was brought under Nazi control. Trade unions were banned. All other political parties were outlawed. The media became a mouthpiece for Joseph Goebbels. But there was one final threat to Hitler's absolute power: his own army and his own paramilitary, the SA. The SA, led by Ernst Röhm, wanted a second revolution. They wanted to replace the professional army. Hitler knew he needed the professional army's support to conquer Europe. So, in the Night of the Long Knives in 1934, he ordered the SS to murder his oldest allies. Röhm and hundreds of SA leaders were executed. Hitler went on the radio and declared that for those 24 hours, he was the supreme judge of the German people. He had normalized murder as a tool of the state. When President Hindenburg died in August 1934, there was no one left to stop him. Hitler merged the offices of Chancellor and President. He was now the Führer. He made the army swear an oath of loyalty not to Germany, not to the Constitution, but to Adolf Hitler personally. The story of Hitler's rise is not a story of a monster seizing power from innocent victims. It is a story of a democracy that was tired, divided, and desperate. It is a story of elites who thought they could control a populace for their own gain. It is a story of how quickly a civilized nation can trade its freedom for the promise of security and national pride. Hitler didn't hide his intentions. He wrote them down in 1924. The world just chose not to read them until it was too late. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the history of power, make sure to like and subscribe. We release new videos every week analyzing the mechanics of history's most powerful figures. What historical figures should we decode next? Let us know in the comments below.